Discussion of White House fiascos would be complete without mention of the war in Iraq. Earlier this year, the president's solution for fixing the conflict, you will recall, was escalating it. His administration now hard at work trying to beat back the make-or-break deadline of September, when it had promised to tell Congress whether that the so-called surge of U.S. forces was working or not. Case in point, just yesterday morning, the top American commander in Iraq, General Petraeus, asked whether he thought the job of the escalation would be done by September.
I do not. No, I think that we have a lot of heavy lifting to do. The damage done by the sectarian violence in the fall and winter of 2006 and early 2007, as I mentioned, was substantial, and this is a tough effort.
Let's turn now to our own Howard Fineman, of course, the senior Washington correspondent for Newsweek magazine. Howard, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
As General Petraeus was trying to push back this September assessment deadline yesterday morning, at the same time, Mr. McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, was saying he thought the proper time for an evaluation would be September. So are the Republicans not in the White House going to complicate things with the Bush administration when it comes to buying itself more time on Iraq, say, in September?
I think they could. Keith, I spoke to a Republican operative in town here just a few minutes ago who's very close, about as close as you can get to both the White House and the Republican leadership in the Senate at this point. And here's what he told me. He said, in September, if Petraeus comes back with anything less than a really upbeat assessment, and I think we can safely assume that he's not going to come back with an upbeat assessment, then you're going to see Republicans beyond the usual suspects. That is, beyond the names that you always hear about the senators from Maine and Gordon Smith and Chuck Hagel and so on. You're going to see other Republicans begin to peel away from the president. And where that's going to focus is on the next appropriations bill for the Defense Department, which is going to be coming up in the fall. So I think you're going to see another ring of Republicans move away from the president, and that will complicate his situation in the fall.
Is there a sense politically that people understand within the Republican Party why the president continues to push this path so relentlessly when even those around him are saying, check the watch, we're out of here in September?
Well, I think there's a certain reflexive desire to support the president, the Republican president, at the grassroots of the party. When I travel around and talk to Republicans at the grassroots, they want to stick with him out of loyalty to the party. They want to stick with him because many of them believe in the mission as he described it. But that is a dwindling core of people, Keith. We're talking now, that group that I just described, maybe 15% of the electorate, 20% at best. What's going to happen in the fall is that next group of Republicans here in Washington and around the country are going to move away from the president. We're talking about people like Senator Voinovich from Ohio, or just to take another example, possibly Senator Warner of Virginia, or Hatch of Utah, you name it. Outside of the core deep South, in the very, very inner core of the Republican Party, they're abandoning them. And the people who are left behind, they're going to stick to the bitter end, but that's not enough to allow the president to get his way come the fall. What the people who know are telling me is that his room to maneuver in the fall is going to be zero. He can veto something if he wants, but he's not going to be able to get what he wants as he did just a few weeks ago.
Let me take you back to where we started tonight. Speaking of trying to get what you want, where the Oversight Committee is trying to find these emails that have evaporated. Other than something drastic that they're not going to do, impeachment, special prosecutor to pursue erased emails, what can Congress do about that?
Well, I think you've seen the beginning of it. They're going to subpoena people. They subpoenaed Sarah Taylor, who used to be in the White House political office. They're working their way up the chain. I wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe go after Ken Mehlman and ultimately Karl Rove with subpoenas. The White House counsel's office will laugh at the subpoenas and not honor them. And we'll be back in the court, which is where the Bush presidency began. That's where this is headed, and that's where it's going to end probably sometime next year.
And what ultimately, I mean, does somebody have to hand Alberto Gonzales a subpoena with his name on it and not as the signatory before the president punts on him? Because he's not only got this, but obviously today there's the blowback out of the attorneys firing. The defense counsels in numberless cases are saying that they're the victims of political prosecution, using as an example the investigation as to whether or not there were political firings, and there would have been political hirings among the attorneys. This is just, this thing with him particularly is snowballing to such a degree, does the president not have to jump off the snowball?
I don't think necessarily, because